They told him he was a dreamer, but in a world of sleepers, that's just another word for a target. Elias lived in a city that smelled of wet pavement and broken promises. He spent his days in a cubicle that felt more like a coffin, staring at a screen that sucked the life out of his eyes, all for a paycheck that barely covered the cost of surviving to work another week. He wasn't just poor in his pockets, he was poor in his soul. He looked at the man in the high-rise offices, the ones who moved with purpose, and he wondered what secret they possessed. He thought it was luck. He thought it was an inheritance. He thought the game was rigged. And he was right. The game is rigged, but not in the way you think. It is rigged against those who refuse to follow the rules of the few. One rainy Tuesday, Elias sat on a park bench, his shoes soaked through, clutching a coffee he couldn't really afford. An old man sat down next to him. This man didn't look like a billionaire. He wore a simple wool coat and an old watch, but he had eyes that seemed to see right through the noise of the city. He looked at Elias, at his slumped shoulders and his defeated gaze, and he said 5 words that changed everything. The harvest follows the hard winter. Elias didn't understand. He wanted a loan, a tip, a winning ticket, but the old man gave him something far more dangerous. He gave him the rules. Not the rules written in business textbooks, but the laws written in the fabric of reality. The first rule was the hardest to swallow. Kill the boy so the man can live. For years, Elias had been waiting for someone to save him. He was waiting for a mentor, a break, a sign from the universe. He was living like a child who expects his parents to fix a scraped knee. The old man told him that as long as he looked outside for a solution, he would remain a slave to his circumstances. Wealth, real wealth, starts the moment you accept that you are the only one coming to save you. It is a lonely realization. It is a heavy one. Elias went home that night and looked in the mirror. He saw the boy who made excuses, the boy who blamed the economy, the boy who hit the snooze button 4 times every morning. He decided, right then, that the boy had to die. He started small. The second rule was the law of the seed. Most people want the fruit without planting anything. They want the big payout, the viral moment, the sudden windfall. But the old man had warned him, you cannot harvest what you have not sown. Elias began to invest the only thing he had left, his time. While his friends were at the bars drowning their frustrations in cheap beer, Elias was in his cramped apartment, learning. He studied markets, he studied human psychology, he studied the art of value. He didn't see a dime of profit for 6 months. In fact, he felt poorer than ever. He was exhausted. His eyes were red from reading by candlelight to save on electricity. This is where most people quit. This is the gap where dreams go to die. It's the period where you are working harder than everyone else, but you have nothing to show for it. But Elias remembered the old man's voice. The seed grows in the dark before it ever sees the sun. Then came the third rule, the one that separates the rich from the comfortable, the rule of discomfort. We are programmed to seek safety. We want a steady check, a warm bed, a predictable path, but wealth is found in the chaos. Elias had saved a small amount of money, a tiny flicker of security. He had 2 choices, keep it in the bank and feel safe, or bet it on a vision that had no guarantee of success. His heart pounded in his chest as he signed the paperwork for his first small venture. He felt sick. He felt like he was jumping off a cliff. But that discomfort was the feeling of growth. If you are not uncomfortable, you are standing still. And in a moving world, standing still is the fastest way to lose. The months turned into a year. The struggle didn't get easier. Elias just got stronger. He learned the 4th rule. Silence is your greatest weapon. He stopped telling people his plans. He stopped seeking validation from people who were just as lost as he used to be. Every time you tell someone your big dream, you release a bit of the pressure that's supposed to drive you to achieve it. You get a cheap hit of dopamine from their praise, and your brain thinks the job is already done. Elias became a ghost. He worked in the shadows. He built in silence. People thought he had disappeared. They thought he had given up. They didn't realize he was building a fortress. But then the storm hit. Every success story has a breaking point, a moment where the universe tests your resolve. Elias's venture hit a wall. A partner betrayed him. A market shift wiped out half of his progress. He sat on the floor of his empty office, the silence ringing in his ears. He was back to where he started, so it seemed. He felt the urge to cry, to scream, to go back to that cubicle and beg for his old life back. But he remembered the fifth rule: the obstacle is not in the way, the obstacle is the way. The failure wasn't a sign to stop, it was a lesson he hadn't learned yet. He analyzed the wreckage. He saw the cracks in his foundation. He realized that his previous success had made him arrogant. He had stopped following the rules. He rebuilt, not with the desperation of a poor man, but with the cold precision of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. He became obsessed with value. He stopped asking, "How can I make money?" and started asking, "How can I solve a problem so big that people would be fools not to pay me?" This is the shift. The poor focus on getting, the rich focus on giving value. The more people you help, the more the world rewards you. It's a simple math, yet so few understand it. Elias stopped looking at the dollar signs and started looking at the impact. 5 years passed. One day, Elias found himself back in that same park. He wasn't wearing wet shoes anymore. He sat on the same bench, watching the world go by. A young man sat down next to him, looking exactly how Elias used to look, beaten, tired, and searching for an exit. Elias looked at the young man's slumped shoulders. He didn't give him money. He didn't give him a job. He leaned over and whispered those same 5 words: "The harvest follows the hard winter." The young man looked at him, confused, waiting for a secret or a shortcut. But Elias just smiled and walked away. He was rich now. Yes, his bank account had more zeros than he once thought possible. He owned the buildings he used to walk past in awe. But his true wealth wasn't the car he drove or the house he owned. It was the fact that he was no longer a slave to his own fear. He had followed the rules of the harvest, and he knew that as long as he kept planting, he would never go hungry again. The secret isn't in the gold, it's in the person you become while you are digging for it. Most people want the prize, but they hate the process. Elias had learned to love the dirt, and because of that, the world belonged to him.